Thank you. I'm going to be chairing the meeting today, Councillor Bushinsky, and that's part of Anne's program of trying to make sure the councillors can step in and fill the void if something ever were to happen to her, which I don't imagine it ever will. Anyway, I'd like to start out with the land acknowledgement. And I went through and I picked a land acknowledgement that I thought would be appropriate and fairly straightforward. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Thank you. Next item is a call to order and approval of the agenda. I'd like to ask, is there a mover or a seconder on that, or just all in favor? Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests among the council? Seeing none, I think we will continue on then. I'd like to do an adoption of the minutes, and I need a mover and a seconder for that. So we'll have Terry and Gail. Thank you. Is there any discussion with respect to the minutes? Okay, then we'd make a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular and closed session meetings of council to be held on February the 5th, 2024 as circulated. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. And we need, there's a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the special meeting of council held February the 20th, 2024 as circulated. Could I get a mover and a seconder? So moved by Ken, seconded by Greg. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. And we're now going to go into a public meeting. And we'd move that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matters: proposed retail business holiday exemption bylaw, housekeeping zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0004, consent application number B 2023-0027H for Kawasan, and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-005 H for Graph. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Okay, moved by Terry, seconded by Greg. And then could I have a show of hands? All in favor? Carried. Okay. So council will now hold public meetings for a proposed retail business holiday exemption bylaw and proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications. The proposed retail business holiday exemption bylaw is a bylaw to permit retail business establishments to operate on holidays in the Township of Seguin. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which notice of the meeting was provided and the date on which notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting on the Township of Seguin's website on February 8th, 2024.
I now ask Rory Payton, Supervisor of Municipal Bylaw Services, to explain the purpose of the proposed bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As you all know, the Retail Business Holidays Act has a long history in the province, dating back to its earliest version in 2003. The act regulates the opening and closing of retail businesses on specific holidays. This legislation aims to balance the interests of employees, consumers, and businesses by designating specific holidays where retail businesses must remain closed or operate within limited hours. Currently in Ontario, retail business establishments must be closed on 9 holidays each year. There are exemptions dependent on the type of store, such as gas stations, small stores, such as convenience stores, laundromats, etc. However, these mandatory closures do not apply if a municipality has passed a bylaw stating that the act does not apply. Municipalities that rely on tourist economy may be more likely to pass a bylaw of this nature. For convenience sake, I did attach as Schedule A to my report a draft bylaw of what one would look like to cover a topic such as this. Over the past couple of years, staff received inquiries from local retail business establishments, predominantly about the sale of liquor on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, among other holidays, which cultivated confusion amongst business operators and contributed to the retail business requests prompting this report. In particular, 2 convenience stores within the township, which would be classified as a small store under the Act, have made requests for such a bylaw. So under the exemptions, these stores would be permitted to be open on these holidays. However, they would only be allowed to sell tobacco products, antiques, handicrafts, and books on holidays. So any item not falling under these categories would be prohibited for sale on holidays, notwithstanding any other exemption under the bylaw. So a number of other municipalities have adopted a bylaw of this nature. Some have moved forward with regulating the store hours and requiring permits, whereas others have opted to simply declare the act doesn't apply. Rationale for such a bylaw may be that local retail business stores experience fluctuating levels of business due to the ebb and flow of holiday traffic from seasonal cottagers, tourists, and visitors. Granting retail businesses the flexibility to operate without restrictions under the Act may promote financial viability in municipalities' local economy by capitalizing on peak holiday periods. So currently, unless otherwise exempt under the Act, no person carrying on a retail business in a retail business establishment shall sell or offer for sale any goods or services by retail or admit members of the public thereto on a holiday. So under the Act's requirements, Section 4.6 mandates that a public meeting shall be held in respect to the proposed bylaw, which is what brings us here today. Public notice had been carried out on February 8th for this meeting. The Act also mandates that council shall permit any person who attends the public meeting the opportunity to make representations for such a bylaw. So subsequent council meeting for consideration would be necessary if council is in favor of the passage of this sort of bylaw. Today is for public representations and council consideration. It's not to pass the bylaw. Staff would report back with recommendations if council is in support of such a bylaw. So I'm here if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you. Has the township received any correspondence with respect to the proposed bylaw?
No correspondence has been received.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to the proposed bylaw? Please move to the podium and identify yourself by name and provide your address.
Just turn the mic on, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bharat Puri, and I live at 39 Sandy Plains Variety, and I own the store. And this was proposed by me because lots of customers have asked me to keep it open 365 days a year because it's very convenient for them to come here rather than go to Perry Sound to buy stuff. So I was talking to Rory back and forth, and that's how this proposal came to the table. And he asked me to be present here to speak to all of you about this.
That's good.
Thank you. Has anyone registered to speak to the proposed bylaw via electronic participation?
No one has registered to speak to the proposed bylaw by electronic participation.
Does council does council have any questions?
Thank you, Rory. You mentioned that there was, you had inquiries in regards to confusion over the selling of alcohol on Christmas and New Year's Day. Can I just ask what that confusion was? And then the other, I guess, question, although I think I know the answer, no government-controlled liquor store is open for business on Christmas Day or New Year's Day. Is that correct?
So to answer your first question regarding the confusion, it was because historically requests may have been put in or not put in, and some of these stores may have been operating during these holidays without the knowledge of this act. And essentially upon some of these retail business stores reaching out to me to see if there's permission granted, I had pulled up this act and we discussed basically the regulations therein. Which kind of brings us here today. So it's more so just cleaning up what was already there. And like I had mentioned, the act's been here since 2003. So as part of my job, it's just making sure that we're abiding by provincial legislation that kind of overrides municipal bylaws. In this case, the Retail Business Holiday Act is present unless a bylaw says otherwise. And so I just, once again, need to make sure I adhere to that higher legislation. And do you mind asking your second question again?
Sorry, the other, you may or may not know, but my form of a question, but I think it's a statement as well. The Mr. Peary mentioned about people having to travel to Perry Sound to buy alcohol on, but I don't think anybody can do that on Christmas Day or New Year's Day because there are no government-run retail establishments that operate on those holidays. So it would be only to open it up for access within Seguin Township.
Yeah, so I don't regulate any other municipality. As far as the enforcement of the Retail Business Holidays Act, that falls on the municipality and therefore typically falls onto the bylaw enforcement team. As far as the permitted hours, unless you're exempt somewhere else within the act, you wouldn't be able to be selling liquor on these holidays. So in the case of Barat, because he falls under the exemption of a small business or small store, he can sell the 4 items that I had listed before, but liquor sales wouldn't be included. So if a bylaw of this nature were to be passed, Barat would be able to sell whatever he's legally able to sell within his store without any sort of obstruction, which in some ways actually reduces some confusion because you can pick up the chips, and if you want, you can pick up something else as well, as long as it's legal to sell in the store.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ken.
Two on them days?
Yeah, I have a small, I'm confused about this law as well, and I can't speak like Rory in a very legal term, but I can speak simple English. So I talked to LCBO. First of all, I asked LCBO if we were permitted to sell alcohol on these days. And they said that whatever the bylaw is in your township, you should follow that. Then they have no problem. So then I asked them further that what if they have no bylaw? They said, you need to go and talk to them about having a bylaw. I said, what should I ask them? They said, ask them if they would allow me to sell alcohol and beer 365 days a year. Then LCBO has no problem us keeping it open for the entire day to sell everything. That's the clarification I got from them.
Is that the way you understand it, Rory?
Yeah, so basically what LCBO, I mean, I can't speak for them, but the way that I interpret that is they need a bylaw that says you can be open 365 days a year. In the absence of such a bylaw, we have to rely on higher legislation, being this act. Through conversations with our lawyers, they confirmed this as well. So there is a section underneath the act, section 3 sub 5, which basically goes under the fact that there's an exemption where if you, let's say, are working inside of a restaurant, you'd be able to sell, you know, a beer or some liquor as part of your tourist establishment. However, the section 3.5 of the act states that you wouldn't be able to sell it from a retail store in the sense of, you know, uncracked cans of beer or whatever they may be for you to bring home. It's simply for like a restaurant where you can sell liquor on those days if you're like a restaurant or something like that. So basically the act would trump the absence of any bylaw, and the only way for us to circumvent that would be for a bylaw to be passed that says that the act does not apply. If that makes sense. I can go into more detail if you'd like.
That just means it doesn't apply to the township. Okay. And I look at this list and I don't agree with 365 days, but I don't think they need to be closed for 9 holidays. I'm looking at the days where there's families like New Year's Day, Christmas Day, and Thanksgiving Day and Family Day. Those are the days that I see.
So there are more than one way to deal with this. Like Aurelia, for instance, they regulate it through permits, the use of permits, and they limit store hours, and they also define what type of store it is, may have a different regulation. Other municipalities like Collingwood, they opted just to do a blanket exemption, so to allow all stores to operate 365 days a year. You know, there's more than one way to deal with this if this is the desired direction of council.
I would like to add something to the council that there is a proposal to have a gas station at this location based on customer request, and also a Subway restaurant here in future. I'm working on the plans and getting all kinds of permits for that. So I just wanted to add that to all of you, that that will probably be coming in next 1 year period time.
Thank you. Terry?
Thank you. So presently, with your licensing agreement with the LCBO, you're allowed to sell alcohol. Is there a specified time period during the day, or is it just you're allowed to sell it while you're open, period?
They have a time period of 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. In
Okay.
between, I can sell it anytime. Based on the hour of operation, I'm open. I'm not open after 8 o'clock,
Right.
7 o'clock in winter time. So we close at 7 in winter and we close at 8 o'clock in summertime. So we are well within the regulation of LCBO.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Greg?
Sorry, and maybe both speakers can answer the question. As a designated tourism area, there are exemptions already in place under the Retail Business Act for the sale of alcohol on certain days, certain holidays already. Correct?
So there's 9 holidays. I'll just jump right in. So there's 9 holidays in which the act applies to. So that's New Year's, Family Day, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Victoria Day, Canada Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day. So that is the days in which retail business establishments must be closed in the absence of an exemption that would allow them to be open otherwise. So, for instance, if you're a gas station or a pharmacy, or you're selling or offering for sale liquor other than liquor sold at a retail store, tourist establishments, etc., there are a number of exemptions in which you would be allowed to operate under certain conditions. Whereas a bylaw of this nature would essentially say the exemptions don't really matter because you're allowed to operate on these 9 days without any sort of criterion to follow.
Okay, sir, did you want to add any more before?
No, I think I agree with Rory. And I did not think about this before coming to this meeting. If there are other townships who are allowing a blanket approval to run the stores 365 days, I didn't know that. So that's a good thing to know.
Okay, thank you, Rory. Thank you, sir. I'll go on record in saying that I am not in favor of selling alcohol on Christmas Day, and it'd be very difficult to get me to agree on New Year's Day. I think from an employee and a family point of view, I think that, and I am not against having a beer, don't get me wrong, but I think that there has to be some position taken, and as it stands right now, until I see a staff report come back, I may as well go on record as saying that my position is that I can't see me approving the sale of alcohol on Christmas Day. Thank you.
Mayor McDermott?
I just want to be clear that separate and apart from the sale of alcohol, the current, Rory, the current bylaw doesn't even allow Sandy Plains or Rosso General Store, for that matter, to be open to sell milk and bread on those 9 days. Is that correct?
So essentially under the act, it says that shops under 240 square feet with 3 or fewer employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they can sell under the following categories, which is tobacco and articles required for the use of tobacco, antiques, handicrafts, and books.
So regular shopping of food does not fall in there. So I am very much in favor of allowing the stores to be open. I could consider for all sales for all 9 days, but listening to both Ken and Greg suggest that we should have 2 exemptions for alcohol of Christmas and New Year's. I would agree with that. But in terms of other shopping for groceries, I think we should allow these stores to be open because they're so dependent on tourism. And those are our busy weekends, and they make a lot of money on regular sales.
Councillor Fellner, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
no, I would tend to. Oh, pardon me. I tend to agree with my fellow councillors and the mayor. I think that you need to find a remedy to allow the businesses to be open on these 9 days. As far as the sale of alcohol goes, I think Christmas Day and New Year's Days are a stretch in my book. I can somewhat see it, on the holiday long weekends during the summer when it's very, very busy. But if you can find, Rory, a way to facilitate that, I would be in support of something of that nature. Thank you.
Councillor Adams?
I'd be in support of it too, but I agree with Greg and Terry and the New Year's Day and Christmas Day that they shouldn't sell alcohol either, and I'll support everything else.
Rory, could you take the floor, please?
Thank you. My apologies. I just want to go on record in response to Mayor McDermott. My apologies. The correct answer is that tobaccos, antiques, handicrafts, all the items that I mentioned before do apply as an exemption. Foodstuffs as well apply as an exemption. My apologies.
I just want to add the analytics that I have access to. I have access to the analytics that on days where we are not selling alcohol, these 9 days, our sale for convenience store items, like everything else, is only $300 to $600 depending on winter or summertime. If it was allowed to sell alcohol on those days, then the sale would go in the range of $4,000 to $5,000 or more. Just sharing the information.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Thank you very much. In accordance with the Planning Act, council will consider all matters placed before it prior to granting a consent or passing a zoning bylaw. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the passing of a zoning bylaw amendment and who has not submitted such a request in writing should provide your full name and address to the clerk. No one other than the prescribed persons may appeal an application under the provisions of the Planning Act. If they do not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin prior to the decision of council, then the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. So we will move on to item 5B, which is a housekeeping zoning bylaw amendment application R 2024 0004. The purpose of the housekeeping zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0004 is to correct the zoning for camp, and I won't be able to pronounce this properly, Koinona. Councillor Adams, how do you pronounce it?
I'll ask Andrew.
Koinonia, thank you.
Andrew.
As it was not carried forward from a former zoning bylaw. This will recognize the existing commercial use. Council directed this amendment as a municipally directed rezoning. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on February 13th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered to provide in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Please move to the podium and identify yourself by name and provide your address. Has anyone registered to speak to this application via electronic participation?
No one is registered to speak to this application by electronic participation.
Does council have any questions? Would our Director of Planning like to just give us a very brief, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Adams.
I just wanted to make note that this is when I talked to Rory about this one in the spring when they're operating, and I guess in 2006 it was changed to a residential, and it needs to be a commercial property for the business they run.
Would our Director of Planning like to make any comments?
Certainly. Councillor Adams hit the nail on the head. I think this was an inadvertent change during the creation of the comprehensive zoning bylaw update. It was changed from a C2 in a fully bylaw to a residential zone. At council's request, it is being changed to what is now a C5 because C2 in the fully zoning bylaw is C5 in the Seguin zoning bylaw, and it will apply to the same area and it will reflect the current use of the property.
Is there any other questions or comments? All right, then we'll move along to item 05C, consent application B 2023-0027H. The purpose of the consent application number B 2023-0027H Kosowan is to grant a right-of-way over the subject lands to provide legal access to a vacant waterfront property. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on February 13th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered to provide in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Please move to the podium and identify yourself by name and provide your address. Has anyone registered to speak to this application via electronic participation?
No one is registered to speak to this application by electronic participation.
Does council have any questions? Hearing none, we'll move forward to the last item, which is is zoning bylaw amendment application 2024-0005. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0005H Groff is to rezone the subject lands to permit a new equipment storage building on these lands. The zoning bylaw amendment will also correct the boundary of the LSR-106 zone to ensure it aligns with the property boundaries. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on February 13th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered to provide in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
Correspondence in support of the application has been received from Brad Nullmeyer, Clive Mail, Craig Smith, and Timothy Best and Marilyn Leahy.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Please move to the podium and identify yourself by name and provide your address. Has anyone registered to speak to this application via electronic participation?
No one is registered to speak to this application via electronic participation.
Does council have any questions? Thank you. Council will now close the public meeting and reconvene to the regular meeting. I have a motion that the public meeting held for the following matters is hereby closed and that the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. And the matters where the proposed retail business holiday exemption bylaw, the housekeeping zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0004, consent application number B 2023-0027H, and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0005H. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Okay, moved by Terry, seconded by Gail. Could I have a show of hands as to all in favor? Thank you. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-006, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, Application number R 2024-0004, Camp Conona, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover and a seconder? So moved by Ken, seconded by Greg. Could I have a show of hands? All in favor? It's carried. I have a motion that the township, that the council of the corporation of the township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent application B 2023-0027H Kosowan, subject to the conditions set out in the decision. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Terry, seconded by Greg. All those in favor? Carried. And I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-029, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-003-09387, application number R 2024-0005, -8 for Groff is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I get a mover and a seconder? So Ken and Greg. All those in favor? Carried. We're going to move on to number 6 on the agenda, which is shore and concession road allowances. And council will now consider the following road allowance applications. Shore road allowance application number RAS-2023-0001H for Boyle on Whitefish Lake, bylaw number 2024-017. And a shore road allowance application number RAS 2023-004-8 for Gervan on Sucker Lake, bylaw number 2024-024. Have any written objections been received relative to these applications?
No written objections have been received.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak to these applications? Please move to the podium and state your name and address. Has anyone registered to speak to these applications via electronic participation?
No one is registered to speak to these applications via electronic participation.
I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-017, being a bylaw to close, stop up, and sell portions of the original shore allowance, application number RAS 2023-0001-8H Boyle, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I get a mover and a seconder? So Gail and Greg. All those in favor? Carry. Okay, there are two parts to the Gervan application. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-024, being a bylaw to close, stop up, and sell portions of the original shore allowance, application number RAS 2023-004H Gervan, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Ken and Gail. All those in favor? Carried. Then the second part is a motion that bylaw number 2024-025, being a bylaw to deem lot 39 of Plan 286 pursuant to section 54 of the Planning Act, not to be on a plan of subdivision. Property roll number 4903-010-003-05910. File number D-2023-0007-H. Gervan is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Gail, seconded by Ken. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda for the March 4th, 2024 meeting of council. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Terry, seconded by Ken. Okay. Okay, could I get all those in favor? Carried. So I guess the 7A is an update re climate change from Forrest and Preston. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Chair, Council. This update it's a bit overdue, but I think it's timely nonetheless to provide a bit of an update as to where we're at with climate action and energy management within the township. We'll briefly start with kind of an update on the commitments that you all have made throughout the years, and talk about the work that we've been doing, the work yet to come, various plans, how these commitments all dovetail within some other operational actions that have been undertaken, and moving forward, what that means for the township. So quick reminder, earlier in 2023, Council adopted the Corporate and Community Climate Action Plans, which were part of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Program. And as part of that, it's essentially a 10-year project or a 10-year commitment with the aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And most of those align with the original Paris Climate Accord targets, which were 30% emission reduction by 2030 and net zero operations by 2050. Our commitment at the time for corporate emissions were exactly that. And then likewise, you'll remember that we passed a community climate action plan simultaneously with a 6% emission reduction and intending to be net zero by 2050 for that as well. What many may not remember is through legislation, municipalities are required to report on their energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions, in two different ways. So every year we have to submit reports to the broader public sector, which is part of the Ministry of Energy, and that includes the annual energy consumption. But along with that is the requirement for a conservation and demand management plan. And so I believe we are now at the third iteration of that at the provincial level. And that started way back in, I believe it was 2012. And so as part of this, because we've put so much work into these climate action plans, both locally and regionally, we intend to simply use the conservation and demand management plan that's due for renewal in 2024 to essentially reference the work we've done in the CAPs so that everything aligns, we're not duplicating efforts, and we can advance the corporation through already established means. And with that, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Preston. Preston joined us in August. He is a NOHFC intern, and he's made my life a whole lot easier going through a tremendous amount of data, working to reconcile some differences in what we had recorded. In particular, we'll talk about a project that he was integral to with the airport shortly, but we'll continue on here.
So first of all, some of the actions required to meet those commitments include, but are not limited to, the encouragement of greenhouse gas emissions reductions, improving energy efficiency, reducing the use and reliance on fossil fuels, adapting to a changing climate by building greater resilience, and strengthening community engagement and collaboration.
So quite often we hear, well, why should we care? Why should Seguin care? And I think it's pretty clear. You all know from your constituents and by way of the most recent strategic planning exercises, climate was top of the list for pretty well everyone. We've talked the talk and we've walked the walk as a municipality with our environment first policies. So it makes a lot of sense. In regard to the real whys, one of the international panels on climate change a couple of years back said that Canada will experience climate change at 2 times the global pace due to our northern latitudes. And I think we're seeing it. We're seeing it with these strange winters. We're seeing it with flooding. We're seeing it with wildfires in the region. And because all of this has very significant and potential impacts to Seguin residents regarding health, safety, financial requirements, kind of those key tenets to life.
So it's currently underway in Seguin. So there's a variety of different actions that we've started or begun to work on or have in mind. First of which is the administration of the FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Partners for Climate Change Program action plans. That's, as I said, in progress. Recently, we have started the process of conducting facility energy audits. I'll go into that a little bit later, but they are well underway. We're anticipating a finalization date as of March 15th on those. As Forrest mentioned previously, annual reporting, which is due every year by the province, is also underway with a due date of July 1st as required by the province. We're also working, as Forrest said, on the conservation and energy demand plan. We're well on the way of achieving the July 1st deadline on that as well, and significant work has already been done. We're also working on securing a sustainable procurement policy, we've been having discussions on that, and we're looking to hopefully get something done on that by June 1st. There's also, with our new energy tool, the Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool, which is new by the province as of 2023, we're looking for ways to connect that to our GIS software to allow for better data modeling and outcomes along with and just predictions, that kind of stuff. As always, we're identifying and pursuing external partnerships and continually looking for new funding streams. We're also supporting the expansion of the public EV charging infrastructure and working on natural capital inventories, as well as asset management planning.
And I'll add to the natural capital side of things. It is advancing, and it's advancing fairly rapidly in partnership with the Georgian Bay Biosphere and the greater region to kind of magnify the effectiveness of doing that work, particularly when we're thinking of these ecosystems. They are obviously significantly larger areas than just say a microcosm of a single municipality. And so that's well underway. And then the Parry Sound Area Municipal Airport, that we've been working through the feasibility study to assess the needs for increased electrification to address some energy shortfalls there. And with that, we've been basically data modeling to determine what the suitable characteristics of the facility are from both municipally airport-owned facilities, but also those within private ownership or private lease. This is just the beginning of that project. As you know, we are energy constrained there and need to undertake some fairly significant work to increase the feeder capacity.
A little bit more on the facility energy audits, as that's one of our more important projects to date so far. Felt that there's a little bit more attention. So we used our new Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool to identify 13 of our highest emitting and energy using facilities. So we're doing facilities from community services, public works, fire, and the Parry Sound Municipal Airport. So we're including a variety of different departments and parts of the township. Some of the initial findings from the 9 of the 13 sites that have already been completed is that some of our facilities, especially our older ones, are experiencing major heat losses. Specifically, the doors are one of the larger areas of that heat loss, but insulation and windows, as well as a few others, are also contributing to that number. We're also identified that there's numerous cost-saving opportunities from automation, whether that be automated lights, setbacks, and garage door closers. There's also we've also identified that a lot of the infrastructure is at or past its anticipated end of life. That specifically lies in the heating systems, and more specifically in the propane heating systems in a lot of our facilities. In addition to the heating systems, several of our doors and windows, along with the building envelope itself in some cases, are nearing end of life or relatively underperforming. There's also many minor improvements that we can pursue as well, such as replacement sealing and seals and LED bulbs in areas which does not already have them. Some of the outcomes for this project is it will give us an itemized list of where to prioritize and what actions to prioritize in terms of reducing emissions and energy use, which hopefully will reduce costs as well. In addition, once we have an inventorized list of our buildings, we'll be able to pursue funding applications to external partners to help reduce the cost of any capital projects. And by doing this together, we're hoping that to both lower the cost of any retrofits, but also speed in the process and lower overall energy use. So there's a couple other environmental programs and initiatives that are underway. Our annual membership in IceCap is one of them. IceCap is a collaboration between the municipalities and local First Nations communities. We're also continuing water quality testing, BEFNIC monitoring, Phragmites control and restoration, and our blue-green algae notification systems.
So one thing municipalities tend to be not great at is celebrating our successes. And so it's been a very busy year. But I think everyone at the township should be proud of themselves. I think council should be committed for the foresight and the commitment to the corporate and community climate action plans. I'm certainly pleased with having a climate change intern to help navigate all these programs and projects and undertakings. And we've also seen success continuing to work with Georgian Bay Biosphere, Generation Effect, which is we've used their branch for some funding applications, and just trying to move that needle forward in the most effective from a both financial and timing perspective possible.
A little bit more on data, as important as it is in our system. As I mentioned, we just recently, as of 2023, switched over to a new province mandated tool, which is the Energy Star tool. With that, we completed our 2021 report as of October 2023. So we reported on the 21 year in October. Next year, this year is a double reporting year where we have to report on our 2022 and 2023 energy use in our facilities, which there's 29 of them on the Energy Star tool. It's important that with this new system and historic data going back to 2013, that we make use of this big data and start to consider incorporating it into strategic decision making. I also would like to highlight the graphic on the right of the screen, which shows the energy use in green and the greenhouse gas emissions in purple since 2013. We managed to find data all the way back to 2013 by month. And I'd like to highlight there's a few key things. Firstly, as expected, they mirror each other fairly well. As energy use goes up, so does the greenhouse gas emissions. And there's also a dip in 2020, which you can see, which I feel it's important to highlight that was a COVID probably caused dip. And we're now entering pretty much expected kind of levels of usage. 2023, as you can see, is missing, but that will be coming very soon. And we'll be reporting on that, as I mentioned, this July. It's not just important to talk about the corporate aspect of climate action, but also the community engagement side of it. As of this spring and summer, there's several different events and initiatives we're undertaking and looking to undertake. First of which is the Earth Day event, Earth Day 2024, which we're planning in the initial stages of planning, which might consist of a community garbage cleanup, as well as a native wildflower or a prairie grass, as well, or a tree giveaway for people interested. This is a multi-departmental initiative and it's just started. Another one, which is I'm pretty excited about, is a community tree planting project at the Christie Fire Hall, which we're looking to plant between 0.6 and 1 acres of trees using community volunteers from the Green Industries grade 11 high school class. And again, that's at the Christie Fire Hall. So we have a class potentially lined up already for that.
Around 500 trees.
Just about 500 trees can fit in the area that me and Sean have discussed. Youth and Cottage Association game, it's also something that we plan to really up this spring and fall and summer. With that, we're looking to do program presentations, potential events such as planting events, and create other volunteer opportunities to to collaborate. And finally, social media and Let's Connect. So we're looking to up our social media and online presence through a variety of different approaches, progress updates, providing supporting material, volunteer opportunities, and providing educational materials as well. So there is a couple challenges so far. As Forrest mentioned, historical energy data is one of those challenges. We missed a little bit. We were missing a little bit of data, especially in the earlier years, 2016 to 2013. We just finding that data and uploading it to our new energies tool proved quite exhaustive and quite timely. But we have that all on there now. And another key challenge is the fact that this tool that we're using is so new. It's just being used as of this year, means that there's plenty of system bugs. There's new upload formats and requirements. And more importantly, a lot of the metrics we want to use in the future are not quite available yet. So being that it's so new, we're hoping to be able to use it a lot more in the upcoming year or two, and more as it goes on.
So a word you may have heard at your various conferences is this buzzword of big data. Big data is exactly that. It's volumes of data spanning all different silos, different data types. This can range from things like taxation information to environmental to energy consumption. And tools and analytics now have come a long way. And there's a lot of opportunity to start to use data in ways that it's never been used. You can start taking these tools, making linkages that never existed before and start making really informed decisions. Whether those decisions are based on, let's say, energy consumption relative to, say, big data like weather or normalization of weather, or how these decisions regarding improvements in finance might impact building performance throughout various situations. How to model operating costs over the long term relative to the improvements. And so we're really in the infancy of the idea of taking this data to the next level, but we have already engaged Chris Mahan, who works for us and also works for the West Perry Sound Geography Network, to build these tools and make these linkages between these separate silos like the Energy Star Portfolio Manager and these already large corporate data sets within the GIS. And so that's really exciting. There are fairly tight timelines. We know that the clock is ticking with everything related to climate, and anything that we can do, we know there is a timeliness aspect to it. Whether it's the implementing changes and recommendations that came out of our caps, or making decisions around how we're going to track information regarding natural asset management, how that impacts things like flooding, preparation for flooding, preparation for wildfires. So there's a timeliness component to all that. And with all that tied together, there is the constraint of the human type, the who's going to do what and when and how. And so there's a lot of considerations that we have to take as those who oversee the community and the natural environment around us. We've made long-term commitments through these corporate and community climate action plans. We've started down the road of a natural capital asset management inventory. We are starting forward with community engagement, which was clearly was a high priority item throughout the strategic planning sessions. And we are continuing with the collaboration regionally with the ICECAP group, including area municipalities and First Nations. And so there's a lot of next steps. There's a lot of work to be done in a lot of different areas. One of the most major is on the waste side of things. We worked throughout that entire waste strategy to ensure that the corporate and community climate action plans dovetailed with the waste strategy. We have started in these building retrofits to start making informed decisions around capital investments. We will begin assessing the right sizing of fleet over time. I'll leave the exciting one to last. We're working on developing some educational materials, creating a climate lens for municipal decision-making, and community plantings. One of the things that I think is most exciting is the idea of a 2025 business climate forum. How can business work towards reducing their own emissions? It has a magnifying approach across the community, and we're quite excited about that. But with that being said, we appreciate your support throughout the entirety of the process, and the council's commitment to the caps. It's a significant thing, and you should all be very proud of that. But where the rubber hits the road with action and implementation is the real measure of success. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Vincent?
You talked about communication, through Let's Connect and all that. I just wanted to remind people once again that there are many, many seniors in our community. I was at a meeting this morning, there were 60 seniors. They're not looking at your stuff. Do you have a plan to get the information to those people as well?
Through the chair, we have discussed that actually at length as part of the the greater corporate communication strategy. And we fully recognize that not everyone communicates in the same ways. That was clear during the strategic planning exercises. And we've been bouncing ideas around. Is there a way to maybe do a short condensed presentation to the various card groups, the bridge groups, things like that? One of the most, I think, impactful ways of doing that would be to partner with the area libraries.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different ways, and it's not going to be any one way of
But
communicating.
that's wonderful.
But
That's-
it's
that's
there,
nice.
yeah, we will be exploiting all of those opportunities
Nice.
possible.
Thank you.
Mayor McDermott?
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations both to Preston and to Forrest. Your enthusiasm and your data, big or little data, is inspiring for those of us that need to take action. So thank you for the presentation. And I'm going to send you guys an email about your youth engagement for lake associations, because over the last couple of years, I've been approached about shoreline cleanups by lake associations. People paddling in their canoes and kayaks and picking up the junk that washes ashore. So I have some contacts of people who want to do that kind of thing, and even perhaps create, I don't know, a contest between lake associations. I don't know what you do, measure how much garbage everybody gets. It's not probably the right metric, but there is interest at the lake associations of getting involved, and they're never here for Earth Day. So maybe there's a way to create a lake-based Earth Day for our seasonal residents. So congratulations on the report, and now we as council have to put some of that into practice.
Through the chair, thank you. And that is an excellent idea. We're trying to be creative with how we engage. And again, it's no one size fits all.
Councillor Fellner?
Thank you, Chair. Can you elaborate, one of you guys, whoever's been working on it, I was kind of interested in your sustainable procurement policy. So you could elaborate more about the things that you're looking at in the procurement process and how you think that you can make inroads on, and how far you're actually going to take things with vendors, for example.
Through the chair, it's a great question. And I would say we're in early days with it, but I think we're actually further along than we think. So I've been working with the Georgian Bay Biosphere to kind of workshop this in my own head. What does this mean? Because it can be huge. And what it means now is going to be different than what it means in 10 years. So the whole idea of the sustainable procurement policy, in my mind, is to take a pragmatic and stepped approach. So for those who know and those who don't, emissions are really calculated in 3 different ways. There's scope 1 through scope 3. And scope 1 emissions are emissions that we experience directly through business operations. And scope 3 emissions are the emissions that we experience by way of the vendors of items that we purchase downstream, whether it's our vendors' emissions for electricity and gas, or use of fossil fuels in their manufacturing. I think someday we could get to scope 2 and scope 3. Scope 1 is the starting point, because in large part, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, it's really unenforceable at this point. But even implementing scope 1 emissions in your assessments for procurement, that's a big undertaking. So where we're at right now, I've actually pulled together a consortium of area municipalities and First Nations as part of IceCap to discuss what does this mean, and kind of brainstorm ideas for what would implementation look like, both now and in the future. And that kickoff meeting is actually later this week.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, gentlemen. Great update, and keep up with the good work. Our next item is hydro corridor license renewal agreement. So I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-033 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a license renewal agreement recreational related to a license agreement for lands including the Foley Matheson Park, property roll file 4903-030 001 04501 0000 between His Majesty the King in right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure and the Corporation of the Township of Seguin is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Ken? And sorry, and Greg. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. The next item on the agenda is a common element condominium description for a private driveway for shipment. I have a motion that as per the recommendations of staff report number PL 2024-013, Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve the Township of Seguin condominium description approval. Attached to this resolution is Schedule A for the common element condominium description, CON-2022-0001-F shipment. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Gail and Greg. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Passed. The next item is a transfer of a portion of Macaulay Road. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-021 being a bylaw to authorize the acceptance of title of part of Lot 8, Concession 11, Geographic Township of Humphrey, now Township of Seguin, District of Parry Sound, more particularly described as Part 4, Plan 42R 3197, part of PIN 52198-0479, and to dedicate and to assume the said portion of public highway known as a portion of Macaulay Road into the Township of Seguin Municipal Road System for year-round road maintenance is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Ken and Greg. Is there any discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor? Carried. The next item is 7E, and it's related to transfer of a portion of Oaks Road, Celts, to the Township of Seguin. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-022 being a bylaw to authorize the acceptance of title of part of Lot 12, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Foley, now Township of Seguin, District of Parry Sound, more particularly described as Part 1, Plan 42R 22158, part of PIN 52180-0410, and to dedicate and to assume the said portion of public highway known as a portion of Lokes Road into the Township of Seguin Municipal Road System for year-round maintenance, and is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Gail and Greg. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Taylor or Rory? Taylor, okay. Okay, I have a report on site alteration and tree conservation bylaws, which was deferred from an earlier meeting. And we have, I'll read the bylaw, or it's that the resolution is that bylaw number 2024-007, being a site alteration bylaw to regulate and prohibit the modifications to private properties within the Township of Seguin, and to repeal bylaw number 2008-104 and bylaw number 2008-105 and all of its amending bylaws in their entirety, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and a third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Okay. Discussion on this? Yes. Taylor, could you explain it a little bit to us? Give us some background? Thank you.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So these bylaws are up for final consideration by council. I'll start with the site alteration bylaw. It will regulate now all development within 60 meters of the water's edge or in EP zones, environmental protection zones, sorry. These bylaws both do a much better job of identifying riparian area and having higher standards within 5 meters of the lake, which is the riparian area. They do a much better job of identifying how much of a pathway is permitted. So as of right, people can have a 2-meter wide pathway that can be made of natural materials or stone steps. So it takes away some of that ambiguity that we saw before. Patios are also permitted on smaller lots, smaller patios, larger lots, larger patios, and they're defined by numbers. There is no longer any instances of 10% trees can be removed, because that was very difficult to enforce because it was 10% of when and from where. There's a much more robust enforcement section, and there's also the requirement for permits now if people want to do work which falls outside of the exemptions. As next steps, if they're approved, we would want to get out some literature to the public and post on our website of what these bylaws do, try to visualize it, maybe have some drawings that show the scope of them and what can be done. I'm here for any questions.
Any questions from council? I guess I have a question if I could. Taylor, what are the significant changes from the original? Like the original bylaw went through a public process. Do we have to go through another public process with this, or are the changes minor enough that it doesn't warrant a public process?
These have gone through a significant public process. So we've had them on Let's Connect from draft number 1. The very offset of the project, we involved some key developers and proponents. We involved several of the lake associations. Most of the public process was actually within a year or so ago. This got slowed down recently in the legal review. But essentially, in my opinion, it doesn't require any additional public process. It's had a thorough public comments. I believe as a second report on the topic, there was a huge attachment of all the public comments that were received on it, and council and staff worked together to try to meet in the middle and compromise on what we heard.
Mayor?
Thanks very much, and thank you for clarifying. And I agree that communication needs to be a key piece of, and visuals are going to be very important. One question I have for you, we have a publication, and I'm not sure I got the exact name right, but it's Shoreline Management or something in Seguin. It's the little booklet. And my guess is that with these bylaws, it is no longer appropriate to hand out. But I just want to draw your attention to it because a lot of lake associations are still handing those out. So maybe as part of your communication, you need to pull back that old document because I don't think it's consistent anymore with what these two bylaws are. So just a heads up that book's out there and we better just double check.
Okay, I'll look for it and we'll pull it off the shelf if it's still there. And once we get the documents which illustrate how theirs will be in, well, how they'll work and how the exemptions work, we'll also send that out to our lake associations.
And you may want to consider revising that booklet if it's possible too, because I think a lot of people enjoyed getting it for information. Councillor Getty?
I just wanted to thank both Taylor and Rory. I thought, this has been a long process and there wasn't unanimous agreement on it. But Taylor, we had discussions in regards to the riparian zone, and I think what did come out of these two documents is they are very clear and concise, and there is no ambiguity or confusion. So it makes communication both for staff and council with the public much easier. So thank you very much.
Councillor Fellner?
Well, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I as well want to thank Taylor in particular for his diligence here. This has been a long haul. The only comment that I'm going to make is, or I'm going to make two actually, but one is that it's very, very important to really educate both the our constituents and the contracting community as to the changes. I mean, it's been sort of, in a way, Hudson's Bay rules here for a little while. I'm really pleased that, finally at last we have something that's quantitative that we can measure. It should be fairly easy for folks to figure out what they can and cannot do. And the other thing is I like we might have to update this as we go. This is just sort of, the first shot that, and it may need some fine tuning as we go on. And I just want to make sure that as the problems occur, that they're brought to council's attention so that if there is some fine tuning, we can do it sooner rather than later. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? So I would like to ask for a vote on this resolution. All those in favor? Carried. The next item is the tree conservation bylaw. So I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-019 being a tree conservation bylaw to restrict and regulate the injuring, removal, and destruction of trees on private property in the Township of Seguin, and to repeal bylaw 103 and all of its amending bylaws in their entirety is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. And I'd like a mover and a seconder. Gail and Terry. And maybe we could just get a little bit of background on what's changed in this and if you consider that appropriate public consultation has been done that would carry through for this bylaw.
Certainly. Apologies for speaking of both bylaws when I should have been speaking only to the site alteration bylaw. The tree conservation bylaw only applies within 20 meters of the water's edge, so it has a bit more flexibility, but it makes sense because from the official plans perspective, that 20 meters is the ribbon of life and the crucial buffer area. It also applies to environmental protection zones. Like the site alteration bylaw, it has the same, sorry, I'm getting a call. It has similar stipulations around the 5-meter riparian zone. It also permits the same size walkways and patios, so the exemptions do match up quite well. And it also is exempt, like the site alteration bylaw, if you have a building permit or if you have site plan control. So the purpose is we're not doubling up on permitting process or adding extra layers of bureaucracy if you already have approval from the municipality. And yes, I do believe sufficient public engagement and consultation has occurred on this bylaw as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Could I have a show of hands, please, as to support? Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7G, which is a zoning bylaw amendment application for Feld, I should say. So I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-023 being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-030-011-00805, application number R 2023-0025-F Feld is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Ken and Greg. Thank you. And do we need a bit of background on this? Or are we, any questions by council? Councillor Fellner.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I seem to remember this. I think this one came to us by way of public meeting, I think some time ago, and we suggested that perhaps the development be scaled back a bit. It appears that they have, so yeah, I remember this one. Yeah, I'm pretty much okay with this, so thank you.
No other questions, comments? All those in favor? Carried. The next item will be item H, which is report to council on short-term rentals. So that would be Taylor, I guess, would it? Yeah.
This is another one Rory and I co-authored, so thank you, Rory. This is just an update report. It was promised to come forward in March of this year, so apologies for or February of this year, so apologies for being a little bit late on it. But essentially, we're just updating the cross-jurisdictional analysis, update of the quality of life bylaws that we've and council has approved to date, and the work being done in that regard. There's no real recommendation; it's just for information purposes.
Does council have any questions? Mayor McDermott?
Just a question in terms of how many complaints we received during the past year related to short-term rentals.
Rory, did you have those numbers handy?
Hi, Taylor. Yeah, I do. Through you, Mr. Chair. So as far as our total number of calls in 2023, we had 566 calls. The total number of short-term rental calls, I'll kind of break down per complaint type. So there were 56 noise-related calls, 8 of which were short-term rental related. We also got short-term rental complaints related to the zoning of the property. In total, we had 30 zoning calls, 3 of which were short-term rental related. Past that, we had 4 general inquiries to do with short-term rentals. And we received about 24 general inquiries just on kind of where the township stands, what our stance is regarding short-term rentals. So as you can see, there's really not that many complaints that are specific to short-term rentals. Out of the 566 calls last year, only 15 were related to short-term rentals, accounting for approximately 2.5% of all calls in 2023.
Thank you.
Councillor Getty?
Thanks, Rory. Just compared those numbers, because last year we enhanced our quality, we'll call them the quality of life bylaws that are noise and the problem, giving us more enforcement. Am I correct in understanding that there was a reduction in calls in 2023 compared to 2022 for those type of offenses, for complaints of rental properties?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it does appear as though the number of calls have dropped from 2022 compared to 2023. I am very proud and happy to report that my team seems to be doing a pretty good job in handling calls right at the source to do with the concern itself, whether that be noise, parking, fires, or otherwise. I think the numbers kind of speak for themselves right now.
And that was part of it. I wanted to thank the team because I think the quality of life was a discussion that we had. Everybody knows it wasn't another issue that wasn't unanimous within council, but I think that I wanted to applaud you and your team because I think the enforcement and the work being done on the quality of life bylaws has obviously improved the quality of life for the other residents that are being affected. So thank you.
I would just like to ask, was any action having to be taken with respect to any of these complaints specifically with short-term rentals?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Generally speaking, each file is a little bit different. So without getting into the weeds, there were a couple circumstances where formal issuances had to be conducted, whether that be in order to discontinue activity or just verbal warnings. To date, within 2023, legal action was not required in order to resolve the occurrences related to short-term rentals with the stats that I had mentioned earlier.
Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Adam.
Sorry, I just wanted to know if a lot of these complaints were through third-party renters. I mean, your Airbnbs and your,
Do you mind rephrasing your question?
a lot of these complaints were they through the third party, like your Airbnb and third party rentals?
Through you, Mr. Chair, while I'm not able to divulge complainant information, I can say that some inquiries were solely based on the fact that there was an ad posted, whereas some other complaints were received based off of the actual activities that were being done, like noise and nuisance, if that answers your question.
Yep, that's good.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 7I, which is the proposed updated social media policy. And I have a resolution that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the Township of Seguin social media policy community attached to this resolution, resolution as Schedule A. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Greg, seconded by Gail. Any discussion? Would it be beneficial to just give a brief overview, Valerie, on it?
Sure. Through you, Chair, to Council. We are very fortunate. We have really active social media accounts with our community, and for the most part, our exchanges are very positive and engaging. So this policy is more preemptive to ensure that staff has what they need in case we have problematic content on our profiles.
Thank you. Could I have a show of hands, please, on it for? Thank you very much. The motion is carried. And now we have an item with respect to purchase of equipment with donated funds. You need to move her. Well, I need to read the resolution first. And the resolution is that as per the recommendation of staff report number FS 2024-001, Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve the purchase of a utility vehicle and accessories through the tendering process for the replacement of 2 older pieces of equipment utilizing the funds donated by the Christie Firefighters Association. I have a mover and a seconder. It's Terry and Ken. Are there any questions with respect to this? I guess I just had one question, and that was, I think we're going to purchase a new ATV to replace an old ATV and a sled. And I just wondered if we still are going to have some form of snow machine that could be used for safety purposes in the wintertime if somebody had to be dragged out of an inaccessible home because of snow on the roads. Do we still have that equipment? And I don't know if there's someone that can answer.
Yeah,
Oh.
so I'm here now, yeah.
Thank you.
So the plan is this piece of utility equipment will be a 4-season piece of equipment. So it will be purchased with tracks, so it will be usable in the winter months. Plus, we do have a Skidoo based out of Station 40 that'll be available.
Great, thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. We're moving on to business. And the first two items deal with resignations of business association members. I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby accept the resignation of Prem Baines from the Seguin Business Association and thank Ms. Baines for her service on the association. Could I have a mover and a seconder? So Greg and Terry. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And the second one is that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby accept the resignation of Anuband Lakera. It's almost as difficult as Bushinsky, from the Seguin Business Association and thank Mr. Lakera for his service on the association. Could I have a mover and a seconder? So Gail and Ken. No discussion? All those in favor? Carried. The next item of business is a municipally significant event. So I'll read the resolution. Whereas the organizers of the Cookout with Cuddy event to be held at the CNIB Lake Joe Camp on Saturday, August 17th, 2024, have advised that they require council to designate the event as a municipally significant event for the organizer's application for a special occasions permit. Therefore, be it resolved that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby support the Cookout with Cuddy event proposed by the CNIB Lake Joe Camp, and council does hereby designate the event as a municipally significant event. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Okay, moved by Greg, seconded by Terry. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. The Rotary.
So if you just introduce that council discussion on the request.
Okay. Yeah, how much was it for? Do you remember? Do you remember how much it was for? Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Okay, the next item is a request for funding for Rotary Strikes Against Cancer annual 3-pitch tournament. It's a funding request to the township from the Rotary Club of Perry Sound. It's in your package. So is there a resolution for that, or are we just discussing? Let's have a discussion. Oh. Mayor McDermott?
Well, two points. I'm not sure how much money we have left in our donation. So I think we need some input from Michelle, but I do believe that there needs to be some correspondence to the Rotary Club to inform them that all requests of this nature need to be to us by December 1st in any given year. There's a format. So I know we've donated to them in the past. I don't know how much, but I think they need to be considered certainly in the future when all of these requests come in instead of ad hoc one by one. So if the clerk could just make a note that they need to be informed of our process, but I don't know how we can allocate money today if we don't know what's available.
Yeah, I think you're quite correct in that. So I think we should defer any decision on allocation to a future meeting. Councillor Fellner?
Thank you, Chair. Do we have any idea what, I know we supported it last year. I know we supported the year before. Typically, we get a delegation. Do we know how much? Do you have any idea whether we have a surplus in funds here or? we fully
Well,
committed?
last year they requested 1750 and they got 1750, and this year they're asking for the same amount.
Right, but I mean,
But-
do we know whether we, oh, and Michelle's not here today.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We owe council a report on the balances with respect to donations. Unfortunately, that's not prepared and Michelle's not available today. So I think it's fair if council's comfortable with a deferral until we can come back to you with a recommendation based on the allocation of funds that's left.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 9, council reports. So we'll start with Councillor Finson, if we could.
I had a DSAB meeting on February the 8th. I spoke with one of the residents of Rosso about the free vaccination clinics. She's found a traveling vet. We haven't done it for a few years in Rosso. And anyway, she has managed to find a traveling vet from Victoria Harbor who's willing to come. Her name is Erin, who's willing to come and do it. So I have sent all the information to Anna because Anna was in charge of it before. And I've let Dominique know, and I will let them know that they have all the information now. Belvedere Heights Governance Meeting on February 14th. I attended the Pancake Tuesday at the Church of the Redeemer in Rosso. I also I will be going to an International Women's Day event on Friday with Tammy McKenzie from DSAB. February 28th, I had another Belvedere Heights meeting. And I can't remember what that was about, but it was Ontario Health Teams. I can't read my writing. I went to Seniors Connect today in Rosso. They did a presentation there's a new program and it's trying to connect services with the seniors. There was 60 people there, pretty impressive. It was a lunch. Well, that was a free lunch, so that kind of brings out more people, but 60 people, I was pretty impressed and it was very well done. Very nice. Ken was there as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Terry?
Thank you, Chair. I had, in February, I had 2 meetings for the new pool, both via Zoom. I also attended the special meeting that everybody attended. Thank you very much for doing that. It was much appreciated. I've had a few calls from residents regarding the state of the roads, which of course are, I mean, it's the weather. It's nothing more than the weather, but it's indicative of, what Forrest just brought up, and I compliment the maintenance team. I know they're responding as quickly as they can under difficult circumstances. And I think the residents appreciated the difficult circumstances when things were requested. It does illustrate the need to, get going with, road strategy, especially for the repairs of the roads with higher traffic patterns year round. I think that's about it for me. And I anticipate March will be a little busier.
Councillor Getty?
Thank you. It was pretty quiet. The 20th, attended the special meeting for the pool. On the 24th, I attended the dog sled run. I'd just like to compliment staff for the work that they did under, I will say, adverse weather conditions, and opposite to the adverse weather conditions we had last year. They did a great job of being able to pull it off. And not only was a big big shout out, I think, was deserved to the Snowmobile Association as well. They worked very hard on it as well, with the staff. So thank you very much. The only other thing I want to mention, and it's actually something that's coming up, I have a meeting on the 19th of March with the Rosso Nursing Station. I mentioned before, Jason and I have been working with staff and a number of health service providers to try to improve the delivery of health service to people directly in the community in Seguin. One of the things that came out of that was the idea of a health fair being held in Seguin. And contingent on that was it being taken on by the Rosso Nursing Station Committee. Since the last meeting that was at, they did agree to that, and they're looking at a target date sometime in late May or June. The meeting on the 19th will be to firm up a date. And once I have that for the next, I think it's April 2nd is our next council meeting, I'll have a report to you to give you an update in regards to what's happening with that. So just so that you know what's on the table coming up. Thank you.
Councillor Adams?
February the 9th, I was supposed to attend the Watershed conference in Bracebridge. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I had COVID. February the 20th, I attended the special meeting of council with you all. February the 22nd, I attended the Reconnecting to the Forgotten at the West Perry Sound Museum. Right after that, we had our regular meeting. February the 24th, I volunteered for the 39th annual dog sled event again this year. It was a great turnout once again. Great job. Once again by Dominique, Kara, community service staff, public works staff, the office staff who volunteered, and all the volunteers who's helped with the event. February 28th, I had a recreation and culture meeting, or I was supposed to have a recreation and culture meeting, but it was canceled due to weather. March 4th, this morning, I had a conference call with Barry and Teresa about their hill. This morning, or earlier today, also, I attended the community support service, same with Gail presentation. It's a great program to help people with needs and support, especially seniors. It's a great program. I had some calls from constituents that I'm working on, and I want to bring up the Ontario Good Roads conference. If anybody could take my place at that, I'd appreciate that, because when I went to the Roma conference, I found with my legs there's a lot of walking, and I hear the Good Roads is the same situation. I just don't think I can do it because of my legs. So if anybody wants to take my place, let Craig know. If not, I'm going to have to cancel it if I can, if council allow it.
Does anyone on council right now want to take over Ken's place?
You're going.
Yeah.
Jason, I know and if nobody else is looking to go, and I know that my understanding from last year is it's a different budget stream, but would there be a benefit to possibly sending another staff member along that wouldn't be able to, if we were able to adjust the budgeting for the funds?
There is staff representation, and it's not just me and Tom this year. There's some others that I believe are attending. So this is really amongst council and what council wants to do for council representation at that conference.
Do you remember what the date is, Ken, for it? Okay, we have it here, and it
April 21st to 24th.
yes, and actually we have Councillor Fellner, Finson, Getty, and Adams listed, so you've got most of council right now. So we'll leave it, and maybe if anybody on council would like to go, they should get in touch with Craig, I guess.
If we could. Yes, if you wouldn't mind, and we'll look at the deadlines and let council know, because there are deadlines for cancellation. Okay, thank you.
I apologize for the inconvenience.
No, that's okay. And maybe if you were to send that out, Craig, in just an email, because Councillor Collins isn't here either, so that might alert him. Is there anything more in your report, Ken? Okay, so I'll do my report after, which I guess the mayor and the CAO will do theirs. But so on the 9th of the month, I attended the Muskoka Watershed Council conference. There were about 80 people there. It was well attended. They had a number of different speakers, and they basically, I'm not going to read off anything other than 4 topics, which were what the conference was centered around. The first was the scientific case for integrated watershed management. And then how does one implement it? And it was broken down into Indigenous and non-Indigenous implementation. And then there was a key panel discussion. So it was a nice kickstart to discussing integrated watershed management. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of it. It was more to bring people together and brainstorm, and there will be, I guess, information provided by the Muskoka Watershed Council that will make sure gets into the council packages. So that was on the 9th. We had the special council meeting on the 20th, and then on the 23rd, again, it was Muskoka Watershed Council. It was their annual general meeting, and they always have a speaker there. And in this case, it was a speaker about the Muskoka Land Trust, which is like the Georgian Bay Land Trust. And I guess there are an association of land trusts in Ontario. So if you feel like donating your property or part of it, or want to register a conservation easement, depending on where you are, the Muskoka Watershed includes the north ends of Lake Rosso and Lake Joe, and it extends up into Seguin Township a bit. And as well, you've got the Georgian Bay. So if you were on the bay, which most of us are not, there's also a land trust that they have there. It was very interesting. And as I say, that'll be also in your council packages. Thank you. I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you very much. And you're doing an extraordinary job of chairing. So that's great. So on February 7th, I attended the Foley Senior Lunch, which is growing by leaps and bounds. It's put on by the Community Social Services, and depending on the menu, it's well attended. February 8th, Jason and I met with some representatives from Wasauksing to talk about cooperative projects, to take us beyond a memorandum of understanding to actually doing things together. February 13th, we had an airport commission meeting. The 14th was the regular meeting of the Recreation and Pool meeting. On the 15th, I attended a couple-hour focus group on the health unit and where it's going and what municipalities think and want from the health unit. As many of you may know, there is a movement afoot by the Ministry of Health to amalgamate health units. And since ours is already several thousand square kilometers, our health unit is obviously pushing back against amalgamating with other ones, but who knows what's going to happen. On that same day, we had a pool fundraising team meeting, and there is lots of special events coming up. The White Squall Paddling Festival's on the 23rd of March, and I encourage any of you that can to attend and go online to see their silent auction. They are donating all of their proceeds from this event to the pool. And I think what White Squall is doing is a unique but important example of what other local businesses can do to support the new rec center. So we're putting them on a bit of a pedestal because they came to us and said we'd like to donate the proceeds to the pool. Many of you have mentioned the special council meeting on the 20th, and then the 22nd, the launch of the Perry Sound Museum exhibit. If any of you have lived here for a long time and have relatives who might be in photographs dating back to the 17 and 1800s, they want you to go to that exhibit and see if you can identify anybody in these pictures, because that's the goal of the exhibit. Who's in these pictures? That night they said they've already found 5 of I don't know how many people who said, oh yes, that's Granny or that's Aunt so-and-so. So that's the goal of the museum exhibit. So if you can, go. That evening, I also attended the quarterly meeting of the EMS committee, and we had an impressive presentation from one of our paramedics. And you may or may not know that Seguin, actually West Perry Sound, is a test pilot group to use the EMS and paramedics to do home visits. And the presentation was really impressive. I just got it the other day, so I've given it to Donna to put into next agenda package. Just a few things. They have 617 patients that they visit at least once a month and some once a week. 13 of those people are palliative. 26 of them are bedbound, i.e. they can't get up, they're cathetered. And they've made 2,340 home visits in the last 6 months to try and help these patients stay at home. The stats that are really impressive is the reduction in calls to 911 and the emergency department. They're down like 70% because these people are being checked on by the paramedics when they're on calls. It's a really impressive about how they're managing it. The paramedics are also conducting wellness clinics in the community. And at those clinics, they've seen over 1,200 patients and given over 640 vaccinations. All of this never happened until this year. So it really was an impressive presentation. I attended the sled dogs, and I, again, like everybody else, I want to put out a thank you to everybody who conquered Mother Nature. I was stationed at the little swamp opposite the Turtle Lake transfer station, and as were many dozen people. And as the dogs came through that unit, several of the mushers said, "This is the best track we've seen this year." So in spite of the weather, our team put together a fantastic event. And they were even able to ride right into the post where the post lady was in Rosso, because our teams had brushed the snowbanks to make flat snow on the roads. So it was very, very well done. And then on the 29th, Jason and I met, as we have, I think, 3 or 4 times over the last couple of years, with a group called Seeds for Eco Communities. And they are basically a community that wants to build environmental community with passive housing, small houses, tiny houses. And we'd like to see them locate in Seguin. They have money, and we're standing by to see exactly how we can help them. And they've sent us some more information today that Jason and I have to read about what really is a passive house and what really is a tiny house. So that's what I've been doing, and I'm glad, Gail, that you reported 60 people attended today's event in Rosso, because that program has to be used in the next 2 years or the federal funding will go away. So we need some people to make those calls. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for your kind comments, but don't think you're getting out of your day job. I now move it over to Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As much of council has acknowledged, the sled dog mail run on the 24th was yet again another great success, and I must echo your comments that township staff, volunteers across all groups went above and beyond to adapt their plans and programming to make sure that the day carried on and it was provided in a fun and safe manner for mushers and residents. It was a absolute pleasure to be in attendance with everybody there, including MPP Graydon Smith. Chief Dababadong from Wasauksing First Nations was also there to provide opening remarks, and we're grateful for their presence. Staff at the township and public libraries are offering a variety of programs for students and families over March break, including free skating and sessions with Georgian Bay Biosphere and Science North. Residents or anyone interested can visit seguin.ca for details. The ice at the Humphrey Arena will come out in early April for its annual routine maintenance. Details about ball hockey and other off-ice programming will be shared shortly. Exciting to announce that several of Seguin's firefighters have successfully completed their firefighter level 1 training. We are very grateful and thank those volunteers for their dedication in keeping Seguin safe. And again, township and library staff are working on programming and events for Earth Day on April 22nd. So please stay tuned for details on how to get involved. That's it for us, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee minutes and agendas and the correspondence as presented on the agenda for the March 4th, 2024 meeting of council. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Gail and Terry. All those in favor? Carried. And I have another motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby proceed to a closed meeting at 4:36 p.m. in order to address matters pertaining to a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization related to economic development. A trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value related to economic development. And personal matters about an identified individual, including municipal or local board employees related to appointment of community representatives to the West Perry Sound Police Services Board. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Greg and Ken. All those in favor? Carried.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby rise from closed session and declare the regular meeting reconvened at 5:33 p.m. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Terry and Gail. All those in favor? Carried. And I have another motion that bylaw number 2024-030, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of meetings of council is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. We have a mover and a seconder. Greg and Ken. All those in favor? Carried. And I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn this regular meeting of council at 5:34 PM to meet again on Tuesday, April the 2nd, 2024, or at the call of the mayor. You gotta have a mover and a seconder, Terry and Gail. And all those in favor? Carried.